My brother locked the study and said, "You get nothing." I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I just stood there while he turned the key. Because sometimes silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's bait. If you stay with me through this story, you'll see how family money exposes people faster than truth ever could. You'll see how entitlement hides behind smiles, how silence can be strategic, and how the people who think they've already won usually make the biggest mistake. I didn't grow up thinking my brother would become my enemy. When we were kids, it was just the two of us running through my mother's house, barefoot on tile floors that were always cold no matter the season. He was older by 4 years, louder, always convinced he knew better. I was the quiet one who watched everything and remembered details nobody else thought mattered. Our father left early. I was 7. My brother was 11. He didn't come back, and nobody ever explained it properly. One day there was a man at the table. The next day there wasn't. That kind of absence does something to children. It made my brother obsessed with control. It made me observant. My mother worked hard. Too hard. She inherited the house from her parents, a solid place in a quiet neighborhood that slowly became valuable as the city expanded. She kept it spotless, paid the mortgage off early, and never let us forget that stability wasn't guaranteed. That house was her pride, and eventually it became the thing that tore us apart. As adults, my brother stayed close to home. He married early, had opinions about everything, and spoke with the confidence of someone who believed proximity equaled ownership. I moved away for years, built a life that didn't depend on family approval. I came back only when my mother's health started failing. That's when everything shifted. At first, it was subtle. My brother handling her bills, sitting in on doctor's appointments, answering questions that weren't directed at him. He framed it as responsibility. I recognized it as positioning. When my mother passed, the house felt smaller, quieter, like it was holding its breath. We hadn't even buried her yet when my brother started mentioning paperwork. "I just want things handled cleanly," he said. "I'm sure Mom would want efficiency." The will reading didn't happen in a fancy office. It happened in the house. The same house where we grew up. The same dining table where my mother taught us manners. Where she cried once when she thought we were asleep. The lawyer was late. My brother was impatient. His wife hovered, like she belonged there more than I did. When the lawyer finally arrived, my brother insisted we move into the study. My mother's study. The one room she rarely let us touch. The one with the locked cabinets and the old desk that still smelled like her perfume. That should have been my first clue. The lawyer sat down, cleared his throat, started reading. The house, the accounts, the investments. My brother nodded at every line like he'd already memorized it. Then my name came up. It was shorter than his, simpler, but it was there. That's when he stood up. "I think we're done here," he said, smiling tightly. The lawyer looked confused. I didn't say anything. My brother walked over to the study door, closed it, and locked it from the inside. Then he turned to me and said it. "You get nothing." Not raised, not dramatic, just flat, like a statement of fact. I looked at him, then at the lawyer, then back at my brother. I didn't argue. That seemed to surprise him more than anything. He launched into a speech anyway, about sacrifice, about being there, about how Mom trusted him more, about how I left and therefore forfeited some imaginary right he had invented. I let him talk. People say silence makes situations awkward. That isn't true. Silence makes people reveal themselves. They rush to fill it. They say things they didn't plan to say. By the time he finished, he was sweating. The lawyer finally spoke, calmly, carefully. "That's not how wills work." My brother's face changed. He told the lawyer he'd handle it, that he'd deal with me later, that the documents would be reviewed privately. Then he unlocked the door. I walked out without another word. That night, I stayed in my childhood bedroom. I couldn't cry. I didn't rage text anyone. I lay awake listening to the house settle, thinking about how confident my brother had sounded. Confidence like that doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from preparation. The next morning, I woke up early. The house was already noisy. My brother was on the phone. His voice dropped when he saw me. He didn't look worried. He looked victorious. That's when I noticed something odd. There were 2 cups on the kitchen counter, not the ones we usually used. Fancy ones. Guest cups. I asked him who came over. No one, he said too quickly. Then the doorbell rang. He froze. The visitor was a man I'd never seen before. Mid-50s. Expensive coat. Calm eyes. The kind of presence that doesn't explain itself. He asked for my brother by name. And then he asked if I was there too. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about inheritance. This was about something my brother had already set in motion. And whatever he thought he'd secured by locking that study door, he hadn't planned for what came next. The man didn't wait to be invited in. He stepped past my brother like he'd done it before, glanced around the living room, and nodded slowly, as if checking items off a list only he could see. My brother tried to recover quickly, laughing in that forced way people do when they're losing control but don't want anyone to notice. "Didn't know you were coming this early," he said. The man looked at him, then at me. "Early is relative," he replied. His voice was steady, professional, not rude, not friendly either. I was told everyone would be present. My brother shot me a look, a warning, or maybe a reminder of where he thought I stood in all this. "We were just finishing up family matters," he said. "You can come back later." The man shook his head. "No, it's better if I don't." He reached into his coat and pulled out a slim folder. My brother's wife appeared from the hallway, eyes narrowing the second she saw it. "What's this about?" she asked. The man ignored her completely. "I'm here regarding the property," he said, looking directly at me now. "And a few discrepancies." My brother laughed again, louder this time. "There are no discrepancies. Everything's settled." The man didn't argue. He simply asked, "Is that what you believe?" Something about the way he said it made the room feel smaller. I finally spoke. "Who are you?" He turned fully toward me. "My name is Daniel Roth. I represent a private trust that holds partial interest in this property." My brother didn't speak right away this time. "That's not possible," he said eventually. "Our mother owned this house outright." Daniel nodded. "She owned most of it." My brother stepped forward. "No, she inherited it from our grandparents. It's been in the family for decades." Daniel glanced at the walls, the photos, the furniture. "Yes," Mr. Daniel said. "And then she did something with it that you weren't aware of." My brother's wife crossed her arms. "This is ridiculous. We already had a lawyer here." "Yes," Daniel said. "I know." "How do you know that?" he asked. Daniel didn't answer him. He turned to me instead. "Your mother was very specific about who needed to be present when these documents were discussed." I looked at my brother. He was staring at Daniel now, like he might physically shove him out the door if he thought he could get away with it. "She didn't tell you everything," Daniel continued. "And based on what I saw last night, she had good reason." My brother snapped. "You don't know anything about our family." Daniel met his gaze. "I know enough," he said. He set the folder on the table, but didn't open it. "I'm not here to start a fight," he said calmly. "I'm here to prevent one." My brother scoffed. "Too late for that." Daniel shrugged. "That depends on what you do next." They stood there, staring at each other like 2 men playing a game where the rules hadn't been explained to one of them. I watched quietly. This wasn't my fight yet. I could feel that. Eventually, Daniel looked at me again. "Would you be willing to step outside for a moment? I need to confirm a few details." My brother immediately protested. "She doesn't need to be involved in this." Daniel's voice didn't change. "Actually, she does." I grabbed my coat without asking permission. Outside, the air felt colder than it should have. Daniel walked me toward his car, then stopped. I'll be direct, he said. Your mother anticipated conflict. That didn't surprise me. She made arrangements years ago, he continued. Quiet ones. She was concerned about coercion. I thought about how my brother had handled things since her health declined. The way he hovered, the way he spoke for her. What kind of arrangements? I asked. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Did your brother ever pressure her about the house? I hesitated. He talked about it a lot. That's what I thought, Daniel said. He opened the folder just enough for me to see the top page. Legal language. Dates. Signatures. There's a trust, he said. A partial transfer of interest. It limits what your brother can legally do with the property without oversight. My stomach tightened, but I didn't show it. And who controls it? I asked. Daniel smiled slightly. Not him. Before I could ask more, the front door slammed open. My brother stormed outside. This is harassment, he said. You can't just show up here and start making claims. Daniel closed the folder. I can actually. My brother pointed at me. She doesn't even live here. She left. She doesn't deserve. Daniel cut him off. Your sister's resident status is irrelevant. My brother's face flushed. You're overstepping. Daniel leaned in just enough to make his point. You already did. The words landed harder than shouting ever could. My brother's wife hovered in the doorway, watching everything with sharp eyes. She didn't say a word. Daniel turned to me. We'll need to meet again. Somewhere neutral. I nodded. He handed me a card. Plain. No flashy logo. As he walked back to his car, my brother hissed, You think you're clever. I looked at him. I think Mom knew you better than you realize. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. That night, the house felt hostile. Every sound felt intentional. My brother avoided me completely. His wife whispered in corners. Doors closed quietly. I stayed in my room, going through old boxes, things my mother had kept, letters, receipts, documents, and then I found something that made my hand stop moving. An envelope, my name on it, dated years ago. Inside was a note, not emotional, not long, just instructions, and one sentence at the bottom that changed everything I thought I knew about my brother. I don't trust him when it comes to money. I folded the note carefully and put it back. Down the hall, I heard my brother on the phone again. His voice was sharp now, defensive. He was scrambling. And that's when I understood something important. The lock on the study door wasn't meant to keep me out. It was meant to keep something else in. And whatever my brother was hiding, it was already slipping through his fingers. The morning after I found the envelope, the house felt staged. Like everyone had agreed on a version of reality, and I was the only one who hadn't rehearsed my lines. My brother avoided eye contact. His wife pretended I wasn't there at all. She moved around the kitchen loudly, banging drawers, wiping counters that were already clean. Control through noise. That was her style. I made coffee and sat at the table where Daniel had placed the folder the day before. The spot was still there in my mind, like an outline you can't unsee once something heavy has been moved. My brother finally spoke. We need to set boundaries. I looked up. We. He gestured vaguely, as if the house itself agreed with him. This situation is getting out of hand. What situation? I asked. He exhaled sharply. You bringing strangers into private family matters. I almost laughed. Almost. He came because Mom asked him to, I said. Years ago. My brother slammed his mug down. Coffee sloshed over the rim. You don't know that. I do, I replied. She wrote it down. That was the wrong thing to say. I saw it immediately in his face. The calculation. The panic behind his eyes before it hardened into anger. What exactly did she write? He asked. I stood up and rinsed my cup slowly. Enough. That answer didn't satisfy him. It never would. Later that day, Daniel called. He asked me to meet him at his office. I didn't tell my brother where I was going. I didn't ask permission. I just left. Daniel's office was quiet, neutral, no family photos, no clutter. He offered me water and got straight to the point. Your brother has been preparing to sell the house, he said. That stopped me. He said he wanted to keep it in the family. Daniel nodded. That's what he tells people. He slid a document across the desk. It wasn't final. It wasn't legal yet. But it was close enough to be alarming. He's been in talks with a developer, Daniel continued. Off the record. Using a power of attorney your mother signed when she was unwell. My jaw tightened. She wouldn't have understood what she was signing. Daniel didn't argue. That's exactly why she created the trust. He explained it carefully. Years ago, my mother transferred a partial interest in the property into a trust that required multiple approvals for any sale or major decision. She named a neutral third party to oversee it. She also named a beneficiary, me. She didn't tell him, Daniel said. She told me not to. I leaned back in the chair. So what happens now? Daniel paused. Now your brother realizes he doesn't have full control. And people like that don't respond well to limits. He wasn't wrong. When I returned to the house, my brother was waiting, sitting in the living room, lights off, like he'd been rehearsing confrontation. You went to see him, he said. I didn't deny it. He's filling your head with nonsense, my brother continued. Mom was sick. She was confused. She was clear enough to plan for this, I replied. His voice rose. You always think you know better. No, I said. I think she did. That's when he changed tactics. He softened, sat back, ran a hand through his hair. You don't want this, he said. Trust me. Legal fights destroy families. I looked at him. You locked me out of a room and told me I get nothing. That was frustration, he snapped. You pushed me. I stood there silently, I said. You filled the silence. He didn't respond to that. Instead, he leaned forward. If you cooperate, we can make this easy. That was the moment it stopped being about inheritance and became about leverage. I'm listening, I said. He smiled. You sign off. We sell. You get a payout. Clean. Fast. And you? I asked. I get what I deserve, he said. There it was. The belief that had always driven him. Not fairness. Not family. Entitlement. I shook my head. I'm not signing anything. His smile vanished. Then this gets ugly, he said quietly. It already was. That night, I slept with my door locked. Not because I was afraid of violence, but because I didn't trust what he might try when he thought I wasn't paying attention. The next few days blurred together. Phone calls, emails, Daniel keeping me updated, my brother growing increasingly erratic. Then the first real blow landed. I came home to find boxes stacked in the hallway. My things, labeled. What is this? I asked. My brother didn't look at me. You're not on the deed. You don't live here. That's not true, I said. It is now, he replied. He'd changed the locks. I stood there with my belongings, feeling something shift inside me. Not fear. Resolve. I called Daniel. He arrived within the hour. Calm. Focused. Unimpressed. This is a mistake, Daniel told my brother. You don't get to tell me what to do in my own house, my brother snapped. Daniel pulled out his phone. Actually, I do. He showed him something on the screen. My brother's face drained of color. What is that? I asked. A notice, Daniel said. Filed this morning. Temporary injunction. My brother stared. You can't do this. We already did, Daniel replied. The boxes stayed where they were. The locks were changed back. My brother retreated upstairs, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frames. That night, I sat in my room and opened my mother's envelope again. I read her words slowly. She had known. She had seen this coming. And she had trusted me to stand my ground. Downstairs, I heard my brother on the phone. His voice low, desperate. He was calling someone else now. Someone new. And whatever plan he was trying to salvage, I knew one thing for certain. He was running out of moves. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of drawers opening downstairs, like someone searching for something they knew existed, but didn't know exactly where it was. I stayed still, listened. My brother's footsteps moved from the living room to the study. The study he'd locked me out of days earlier. The same room he'd tried to turn into a courtroom where he played judge and executioner. I didn't interrupt him. I didn't announce myself. I brushed my teeth, got dressed, and walked downstairs like nothing was wrong. He froze when he saw me, looking for something. I asked. He recovered quickly. Too quickly. Just organizing. That's new, I said. He ignored the comment. Daniel shouldn't be filling your head with legal threats. He isn't, I replied. He's explaining consequences. My brother smirked. You think paperwork scares me? No, I said. I think exposure does. That landed. Not hard enough to stop him, but hard enough to make him slip. You don't know everything Mom did, he said. I know she didn't trust you with money, I replied. She trusted me with everything. That's not what her documents say. He stepped closer. Those documents were influenced. By who? I asked. He hesitated, just a second too long. That was when I knew there was another layer. Something he didn't want dragged into daylight. He left the house shortly after. No explanation. No goodbye. An hour later, Daniel called. Your brother reached out to someone connected to your father, he said. That name hadn't been spoken in years. I sat down. What does my father have to do with this? Mr. Daniel paused. More than you realize. He explained carefully. Years ago, when my father left, there were financial entanglements that never fully resolved. Debts, informal agreements, promises made under pressure. And your brother knows about them? I asked. Yes, Daniel said. He's known longer than you. That made sense. My brother had always been closer to my father, more forgiving, or maybe more strategic. He's trying to use it as leverage, Daniel continued, to challenge the trust. I closed my eyes briefly. Can he? He can try, Daniel said, but it opens doors he probably doesn't want opened. That afternoon, my brother came back with someone else. A woman, late 40s, sharp posture, sharp eyes. She introduced herself as a family friend. I recognized her immediately. She'd been at our house once when we were kids, whispering with my father in the driveway, leaving quickly when my mother came home early. My brother didn't introduce her to me. She's here to help clarify some things, he said. The woman smiled thinly. Your mother wasn't always honest. That was her opening line. I laughed once. Short, unamused. Neither was my father. Her smile faltered. They sat at the dining table like they were staging an intervention. She made decisions under resentment, the woman continued. People in that state aren't reliable. My brother nodded. Exactly. I sat across from them. You're saying Mom created legal protections because she was emotional. She was bitter, the woman corrected. That's convenient, I said. My brother leaned in. You don't know what she did to Dad. I met his eyes. You don't know what he did to her. The woman shifted. This isn't productive. No, I said, but it's revealing. I turned to my brother. Why her? He didn't answer. Daniel arrived halfway through the conversation. Perfect timing. He didn't sit down. He didn't smile. This meeting isn't authorized, he said. The woman scoffed. You don't control this family. Daniel looked at her. No, but I control the trust. That shut her up. Daniel placed a folder on the table. I'd advise you both to leave. My brother stood. You think this is over? Daniel didn't flinch. I think you're about to make it worse. After they left, Daniel stayed behind. That woman represents a risk, he said, but also an opportunity. For who? I asked. For you, he replied. If your brother drags your father's history into court, everything comes out. I thought about that, about how my brother always framed himself as protector, provider, the responsible one. What happens then? I asked. Daniel, close the folder. Then the narrative changes. That night, my brother didn't come home. I slept lightly, alert, listening for cars, doors. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. We need to talk. Before he ruins everything. I stared at the screen. It was signed with my father's name. And in that moment, I understood exactly why my mother had done what she did. She wasn't protecting assets. She was protecting me from the mess my brother was willing to resurrect to win. And he wasn't done yet. I didn't respond to the message right away. Not because I was unsure, but because I needed to decide who I wanted to be when I finally did. My father had a talent for pulling people back into chaos with a single sentence. He always framed himself as the misunderstood one, the reasonable one, the victim of everyone else's emotions. Before he ruins everything, that line was about control. I waited until morning. Then I replied with one word, where? The response came almost immediately. A cafe near the old highway. Noon. I didn't tell my brother. I didn't tell Daniel either. Not yet. This wasn't a legal meeting. This was unfinished family business. When I arrived, my father was already there. Older, thinner, but still sitting like he owned the space. He stood when he saw me, hesitated, then sat back down. You look well, he said. I ignored it. Why now? He sighed. I didn't want it to come to this. It already has, I replied. He stirred his coffee slowly. Your brother reached out. That didn't surprise me. He says you're being manipulated, my father continued. That you don't understand the history. I understand enough, I said. You left. He pressed his lips into a thin line and said, I was pushed out. That's your version, I replied. Mom's was different. He leaned forward. She wanted control over everything. I laughed softly. Funny. That's exactly what my brother wants. You don't know what I sacrificed, my father snapped. You don't know what she protected, I shot back. Silence fell between us. Thick, familiar. Finally, he spoke again. There are debts. I nodded. Daniel mentioned that. My father's eyes flicked up. You're working with him. I'm not hiding from him, I said. That's the difference. My father exhaled slowly. Your brother thinks if he exposes certain arrangements, the trust can be challenged. And can it? I asked. He hesitated. That was my answer. There were agreements, he admitted. Verbal ones. Your mother wasn't always transparent. She didn't trust you, I said plainly. He bristled. She didn't have to ruin me. That was the moment I saw it clearly. This wasn't about reconciliation. It was about rewriting history before it caught up with him. You're worried about what comes out, I said. I'm worried about everyone getting hurt, he corrected. No, I said. You're worried about losing leverage. He leaned back. Your brother is angry, desperate. People like that make mistakes. So do people who disappear for years, I replied. We finished the conversation without resolution. Just two people circling the same truth from different angles. When I got back to the house, Daniel was waiting. You met him, he said. I nodded. My brother's using him. Daniel folded his arms. That's risky. For who? I asked. For both of them, he replied. He explained what my brother was attempting. A legal challenge, allegations of undue influence, claims that my mother wasn't competent when she signed certain documents. It won't be easy, Daniel said, but it will be ugly. And the house? I asked. Daniel met my eyes. If this goes to court, everything freezes. That night, my brother finally came home. He looked exhausted, not defeated, not yet. He cornered me in the hallway. You met him. I didn't deny it. He's poisoning you, my brother said. He's trying to save himself. So are you, I replied. His voice dropped. You don't want to do this. You already did, I said. He laughed bitterly. You think Mom made you her hero? No, I replied. She made me her safeguard. That's when he lost control. You were never meant to have power, he snapped. You left. You ran away. I stayed and cleaned up everyone's mess. You stayed because it benefited you, I said, not because you cared. He stared at me. You're choosing them over me. I'm choosing the truth, I replied. He stepped back like I'd slapped him. The next morning, Daniel called with news. Your brother filed a preliminary motion, he said. He's escalating. I closed my eyes. What does that mean? It means the next phase begins, Daniel replied. Depositions, records, witnesses. My phone buzzed again. Another message. This time from my brother. If this goes public, don't expect mercy. I stared at the screen. That threat wasn't for me. It was for himself. Because once everything was out in the open, the story he'd been telling himself his whole life wouldn't survive. And neither would his grip on the house. Once my brother filed the motion, the house stopped feeling like a home altogether. It became evidence. Every drawer mattered. Every document suddenly had weight. Even the way we moved around each other felt monitored, like we were both aware that anything could be used later. Daniel advised me to move out temporarily, not because I had to, but because staying would give my brother opportunities to provoke situations and then distort them. I packed quietly. Only essentials. Clothes. Personal items. My mother's envelope. My brother watched from the doorway as I loaded my car. You running again? He asked. No, I said. I'm making room for you to trip over yourself. He scoffed. You think this ends well for you? I think it ends truthfully, I replied. That was the first time he looked uncertain. The first deposition was scheduled 2 weeks later. My brother acted confident going in. Loud. Talkative. Like he thought performance mattered more than facts. I kept my answers short. Direct. Unemotional. The lawyers asked about my mother's health, her decision-making, her relationship with my brother. I answered honestly. She loved him, I said, but she didn't trust him with financial control. My brother's attorney tried to frame it as resentment, as sibling rivalry, as bitterness from a daughter who left. Daniel shut that down quickly. Then came the moment I hadn't been expecting. They called Daniel as a witness. He explained his role, the trust, the instructions he'd been given, and then he said something that changed the room. There was an additional safeguard, he stated. My brother leaned forward. What safeguard? Daniel looked at him calmly. The trust included an external audit trigger. The lawyers exchanged glances. If there was any attempt to sell, transfer, or encumber the property without full compliance, Daniel continued, a review of all related financial activity would be initiated. My brother's face went pale. That's irrelevant, his attorney said quickly. Daniel shook his head. Not when you consider the loans. The word hung there. What loans? The attorney asked. Daniel turned a page. Loans taken against anticipated proceeds. Informal agreements made in advance of legal authority. My brother stood up. That's enough. The judge warned him to sit down. Daniel continued anyway. Your brother has been operating under the assumption that the house would be liquidated, Daniel said. Based on that assumption, he made commitments. The room was silent. That was when it clicked for everyone. The house wasn't just an inheritance. It was collateral. After the deposition, my brother confronted me in the hallway. You let him do this, he said. I didn't stop him, I replied. There's a difference. You knew, he accused. I suspected, I said, and now I know. He ran a hand through his hair. You don't understand what's at stake. Then explain it, I said. He looked around, lowered his voice. If this falls apart, I lose everything. I met his eyes. You risked everything without telling anyone. He laughed bitterly. You think Mom was innocent in all this. I think she planned for exactly this moment, I replied. That night, Daniel called again. There's more, he said. He explained that the secret visitor, the man who had come to the house, wasn't just representing the trust. He was monitoring exposure, Daniel said. Your brother's financial network is larger than you thought. And illegal? I asked. Questionable, Daniel replied carefully. Over the next week, things moved fast. My brother's accounts were frozen pending review. His wife stopped speaking to him. Rumors started circulating in family circles. People who had always treated him like the responsible one began to distance themselves. He called me late one night. You're enjoying this, he said. No, I replied. I'm surviving it. He went quiet. You could stop this, he said finally. I thought about that. About how easy it would be to cave, to sign something, to make it go away. And then what? I asked. You'd do it again. To someone else. He didn't answer. The next morning, Daniel sent me an update. Your father has been subpoenaed, he said. That was the moment I realized the circle was closing. Not just around my brother, around everything he'd been counting on staying buried. And once that happened, there would be no going back. By the time things went public, my brother had already lost control of the narrative. He just didn't know it yet. The first crack didn't come from court. It came from his wife. She showed up at my temporary place unannounced. No makeup, no confidence, just tension held together by pride. I need to know what's coming, she said. I didn't invite her in right away. Not to be dramatic, just to remind her that doors don't open automatically anymore. She followed me inside and sat down like she'd done it 100 times before, except this time she didn't look around like she owned the place. What did he borrow against? She asked. I studied her face. You don't know. Her jaw clenched. I know there were loans. I didn't know what he told them. That told me everything. He told them the house would be sold, I said, that he'd have access to the proceeds. She stared at the floor. He said it was temporary. Most bad decisions are, I replied. She swallowed. How much? I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to protect my brother, because the number wasn't the point. It's enough to matter, I said. She nodded slowly. He never told me. That's his pattern, I said. Control first. Explanation later. She laughed once. Bitter. He said you were trying to ruin him. I looked at her. He ruined himself quietly. I just refused to clean it up. She didn't argue. That night, my brother called again. This time he wasn't threatening. He was bargaining. They'll take everything, he said. My accounts. The house. My reputation. You risked all of that, I replied. You could still fix it, he insisted. You could sign off. Make it stop. And then what happens to the people you promised money to? I asked. Silence. That silence told me exactly what I needed to know. The next day, the audit findings were leaked. Not by me. Not by Daniel. By one of my brother's former business partners. The story spread fast. Real estate forums. Local business groups. Quiet conversations that turned into questions. Loans taken without collateral. Commitments made without authority. A house treated like a guaranteed payout before it was legally his. My brother went from responsible son to reckless risk-taker overnight. His wife stopped answering his calls. My father's name appeared in documents he'd hoped would never resurface. Daniel called me late that evening. The trust is holding, he said, but the fallout is accelerating. What happens now? I asked. Now, he replied, people start telling the truth to save themselves. He wasn't wrong. My father gave a statement 2 days later, carefully worded, self-serving, but damaging enough to confirm what my mother had feared. He admitted there were debts. He admitted there were promises. He admitted my brother knew. He framed it as desperation, as family loyalty. It didn't land that way. My brother showed up at my door that night. He looked smaller, not physically, just exposed. "They're turning on me," he said. "You built your plans on assumptions," I replied. "Assumptions don't hold up under light." He sat down heavily. "I thought if I moved fast, no one could stop me." I leaned against the counter. "That's not confidence. That's fear." He looked up. "You think you're better than me?" "No," I said. "I think I'm done covering for you." He laughed quietly. "Mom always liked you more." "She trusted me more," I corrected. "There's a difference." That was the moment his anger drained out, leaving something else behind. Regret. Or maybe just exhaustion. "They're coming after the house," he said. "They can't sell it," I replied. "That's the point." He nodded slowly. "I know." A week later, the injunction became permanent. The property was locked into the trust. No sale, no leverage, no shortcuts. My brother's debts didn't disappear. They just lost their imagined solution. His marriage collapsed quietly. No shouting, no scenes, just separation papers filed without ceremony. My father disappeared again, this time for good. And the house? The house stayed exactly where it was, unmoved, unliquidated, unused as a bargaining chip. The same walls my mother had protected, the same space my brother tried to weaponize. And for the first time since she passed, it felt stable. But the story wasn't over yet, because when everything settles, there's always one final truth waiting to be acknowledged. And that truth finally comes out about the study door, the lock, and what my brother thought he'd hidden inside that room. After the injunction became permanent, the house went quiet in a way that felt different from grief. This wasn't mourning. This was aftermath. My brother stopped coming around. Not because he was banned, but because he no longer knew how to exist in a space he couldn't control. The house no longer responded to his pressure. The walls didn't reward his entitlement. The locks didn't answer to him anymore. And the study stayed closed. Not locked, just untouched. Daniel mentioned it casually during one of our updates. "There's still an unresolved matter," he said. "Something your brother attempted to secure before everything froze." I already knew what he meant. The study door. The moment he locked it. The way he said you get nothing. The confidence behind it. People don't perform that kind of certainty without believing something is backing them up. "I want to open it," I said. Daniel didn't hesitate. "You should." We went together, not because I needed protection, but because documentation matters when truth finally shows itself. The key was in the same drawer it had always been in. My brother never bothered to hide it. He believed ownership made concealment unnecessary. The lock clicked open easily. Inside, nothing looked disturbed at first glance. Books neatly aligned, papers stacked carefully, the desk exactly as my mother left it. But Daniel didn't look at the shelves. He looked at the floor. "Has this rug always been here?" he asked. I shook my head. "No. Mom hated rugs in here. We lifted it. The safe underneath wasn't large, just enough to be overlooked if you weren't searching." Daniel documented everything before opening it. Inside were documents my brother never expected anyone else to see. Loan agreements, draft contracts, letters, and one envelope, addressed to him, not from my mother, from my father. The dates told the story before the words did. My brother hadn't just planned to sell the house. He'd promised it, years ago, before my mother even passed, before he had any legal authority to do so. Daniel exhaled slowly. This explains the confidence. The house wasn't an inheritance in his mind. It was already spent. That was why he panicked when Daniel showed up. Why he tried to rush the will. Why he locked the study. He wasn't protecting assets. He was protecting a lie that had been compounding interest. The final document was the most revealing. A handwritten note from my mother. Short, clear, undeniable. "If you are reading this, then he tried anyway." That sentence sat heavier than everything else combined. She had known. Not suspected. Known. Daniel closed the safe carefully. This changes everything. How? I asked. This proves intent, he said. Not confusion. Not desperation. Pre-planning. I thought about my brother standing in that doorway, telling me I'd get nothing. He wasn't angry in that moment. He was afraid the math wouldn't work. When my brother finally came back to the house weeks later, it wasn't to fight. It was to retrieve something. He stood in the study doorway, staring at the open floor. You opened it, he said. Yes, I replied. He didn't ask what we found. He already knew. You weren't supposed to, he said quietly. That's the thing about secrets, I replied. They're rarely protected by silence alone. He sat down heavily. She really planned for this. She planned for you, I said. And for what you do. He laughed without humor. I thought I was smarter than her. I met his eyes. She raised you. She knew exactly how you think. That was when he finally said it. I didn't think it would go this far. I nodded. Neither did she. That's why she stopped you. He left without another word. Not angry, just empty. And in that moment, the house finally felt like hers again. Not a prize, not leverage, not collateral, just a place where truth had waited patiently to be uncovered. After the study was opened and the safe exposed, there was nothing left to argue about. That didn't stop my brother from trying. He didn't come back immediately. Days passed, then weeks. Long enough for the shock to settle and for something else to take its place. Fear. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that creeps in when options disappear. Daniel finalized the documentation. The trust was airtight now. The attempted sale, the promised collateral, the hidden agreements. All of it was formally recorded. There would be no rewriting this version of events. My brother called me one evening as I was leaving the house. Can we talk? He asked. We met at the house. Neutral ground. Or at least it used to be. He stood in the living room like a guest, waiting to be told where to sit. I didn't think you'd go that far, he said. I didn't think you would either, I replied. He rubbed his hands together. I thought I could fix things before anyone noticed. That wasn't fixing, I said. That was doubling down. He nodded slowly. I know. We stood there quietly. No yelling. No speeches. Then he said something I didn't expect. I always thought you were weak. I looked at him. Because I didn't fight you? Because you left, he said. Because you didn't challenge me. I shook my head. I watched you. I watched how you moved, I continued. How you spoke for Mom. How you framed every decision like it was for her benefit when it always circled back to you. He swallowed. You could have stopped me earlier. No, I said. You wouldn't have listened. He didn't argue. I told myself I deserved it, he said. The house. The money. All of it. That's the problem, I replied. You never asked what she wanted. She wanted peace, he said quietly. Yes, I agreed. And she didn't trust you to preserve it. He looked around the room. The walls. The furniture. I thought if I secured everything, I'd finally feel stable, he said. And do you? I asked. He shook his head. That was the reckoning. Just a man realizing the thing he built his identity around was never solid to begin with. What happens now? He asked. That depends on you, I replied. He frowned. Legally. No, I said. Personally. He let out a breath. I don't know who I am without this. That's something you'll have to figure out, I said, without dragging everyone else into it. When he left, I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. Weeks later, Daniel called with the final update. All matters are resolved, he said. The trust stands. No further challenges. I thanked him and hung up. That night, I walked through the house alone. I opened windows, let air move through rooms that had held too much tension for too long. I stood in the study one last time. The safe was closed. Empty now. Its purpose fulfilled. I thought about my mother sitting at that desk, making decisions quietly while everyone underestimated her. She didn't fight loudly. She planned. I understood her better than ever. The next morning, I made my decision. I wasn't going to sell the house. Not yet. Instead, I rented it out short-term. Carefully, legally, transparently. The income went into maintenance, and a small fund I set aside for something specific. Accountability. I told my brother about it months later. "I'm not cutting you out," I said, "but I'm not rescuing you either." He nodded. "I wouldn't deserve it if you did." "That's the point," I replied. He didn't ask for forgiveness, and I didn't offer it. Some things don't need to be wrapped up neatly to be resolved. They just need to stop bleeding. And for the first time in a long time, they did. By the time the dust settled, the house no longer belonged to anyone who had tried to claim it by force, fear, or entitlement. It belonged to the truth my mother had left behind, and to me, the one she had trusted to preserve it. I walked through every room slowly, deliberately. The living room smelled faintly of her perfume, lingering like a memory that refused to fade. The kitchen, where my brother and his wife once strategized quietly, hummed with silence. The study, now locked again, wasn't a prison for secrets. It was a monument to clarity, to foresight, to restraint. I thought about my brother, about how he had stormed in, confident and angry, believing he could manipulate the house and everyone in it to his will. How easily he had assumed that silence was weakness, that absence was surrender. How wrong he had been. He hadn't changed overnight, but he had been forced to confront himself. And sometimes that's more important than victory. I called Daniel one evening just to update him. "It's finally done," I said. He laughed softly. "Not done," he corrected. "Just stabilized." "There's a difference?" I asked. "Yes. People like your brother rarely stop trying. You just have to make sure they don't get in the way of what matters." I smiled quietly. "That's exactly what Mom wanted, isn't it?" "Yes," Daniel replied. "She knew the heart of the storm, and she built a shelter for the rest of us." I walked to the study one last time. The safe sat beneath the rug untouched. The desk, polished and empty, reflected the soft light from the window. I touched the keys lightly, imagining her sitting there, calm and deliberate, planning for a future that would test everyone's patience and integrity. I left the room and closed the door behind me. The house was mine to protect, yes, but more than that, it was mine to honor. Weeks passed. My brother moved away temporarily, forced by circumstances, not by choice. His wife eventually left him. The town buzzed quietly about the leaked financial documents, but those stories never reached me directly. I didn't need them. The story I had mattered was written in actions, not gossip. One evening, sitting on the porch with a cup of tea, I reflected on what had happened. On my mother, on my father, on my brother, on Daniel, on the house that had been the epicenter of greed, ambition, and quiet foresight. I realized something essential. Family doesn't always mean safety. It doesn't always mean love, and it rarely means fairness. Sometimes, family is the arena where you discover who you are, and sometimes it's where you discover who you aren't. I thought about the envelope my mother left me, her careful instructions, her unwavering trust. I thought about the study door, the lock, the documents, and the secret visitor who set everything in motion. And I asked myself the question she had already answered long ago. What matters most isn't control. It's integrity. And so I left the past where it belonged. The house wasn't a prize. It wasn't a weapon. It was a responsibility, a legacy, a reminder that sometimes the quietest voices hold the loudest power. I hope this story made you reflect on your own family, on the secrets, the power struggles, the quiet battles that happen behind closed doors. Because sometimes the hardest thing isn't fighting, it's understanding, surviving, and keeping the truth intact. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you fight, or would you wait like I did? Share your thoughts. I want to hear what you would have done in this situation. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this, where every family has a secret, and every secret has consequences.